Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to meet all of you. My name is Kyung-hee Pyun, and in this panel on Korean fashion in South Korea, I'd like to focus on street fashion from 1950s to 1980s. So let me share my presentation with you, and that is hold on. I forgot how to share my screen with you. So share, I found it. So Microsoft Word, not Word, Microsoft PowerPoint. So let me go into the big screen. So the title of the paper is Impact of American Style Fashion Impact of American Style Fashion on South Korea, Street Fashion from the 1950s to 1980s. In East Asia, high-end fashion is obviously influenced by French fashion. However, the US became the center of the fashion industry after World War II. Just like a post-war contemporary art, US-sponsored fashion and cosmetic brands grew their popularity and market share in Cold War cultural hegemony. Using visual culture and consumer behavior in film and media, this paper posits that young people in South Korea had an ambivalent attitude toward American-style fashion. The paper is composed of the following sections. I cannot discuss the components that influence, I cannot discuss all the components. For this short presentation, I focus on a few illustrious examples I have discussed elsewhere. A longer version of this talk is being written as a book for 20th century Korean fashion from the perspective of material culture and history of technology. So the chapter is composed of 4 parts, the paper. So 1950s and 1960s, and then 1970s and 80s. So my research question is, how did the mechanism of dissemination of a fashion style impact the development of street fashion in South Korea from the 1950s to the 1980s? So in 1967, Roland Barthes wrote the book called The Fashion System. He analyzed the semiotic foundation of writings by fashion journalists. It was an intricate system of encouraging consumers to buy an imagined value, luxury, and conspicuous consumption. Yunia Kawamura wrote in her book, Fashionology, an Introduction to Fashion Studies, that, quote, clothing is a tangible product, whereas fashion is a symbolic cultural product. She debunks the myth of the genius designer and explains the fashion is not about clothes, but is a belief. There is an institutional structure ignored by many fashion theorists that has shaped and produced the fashion phenomenon, unquote. In this paper, I argue that the impact of US cultural hegemony in post-war South Korea left a deep impact on street fashion. Haute couture fashion was driven by well-known designers in France or Italy. However, street fashion in South Korea was disseminated via Hollywood film, Sears Roebuck mail-order catalogs, and other US-produced consumer goods distributed by illicit channels like the Army PX stores in South Korea. The 8th United States Army was stationed in South Korea since 1950. The United States Forces Korea, USFK, was additionally established in 1957. With the US Army on the Korean soil, a US radio and television system called AFKN was created in 1952. The American Forces Network, AFN, is a government television and radio broadcast service in the United States military provides to those stationed or assigned overseas and is headquartered at Fort George Meade Maryland. AFN Korea, or AFKN, was known as American Forces Korea Network. Along with these military networks, cultural organizations like Asian Cultural Council, ACC, or the United States Cultural Center were outlets of US-originated cultural affairs. After the Korean War was paused after the armistice in 1953, Korean government collaborated with the US to restore normalcy, to boost the morale of the refugees who returned to Seoul and to disseminate a propaganda of US cultural hegemony. Fashion shows and beauty pageants were organized from 1956. As in Japan, fashion shows and beauty pageants, including a swimsuit competition, were novelties for most Korean citizens. Before the independence, Myeongdong was a commercial center crowded with fashionable people. One has to dress up to go shopping there. Nora No and other emerging designers quickly adapted to high-end fashion boutique system by opening stores as they came back to Seoul from the refugee during Korean War. In menswear, Sogongdong near the Lotte Hotel, or previously known as Joseon Hotel, was the main area for menswear tailoring. One should not forget that independence movement leaders and early study abroad students in the early 20th century all moved to the United States. As we all know, we will see the advertisement of Brooks Brothers, Savile Row style British menswear was transplanted to Korea via magazines and print media, as well as actors in Hollywood films. With the rise of US print media, young and bold people well responded to these new trends. Fashionable women flocked to tailoring boutiques in Myeongdong. There are other popular shopping streets in large cities like Busan or Daegu. In the film called Jiokwa, Flower from the Hell, directed by Shin Sang-ok, audiences were shocked at immoral behavior of the femme fatale named Sonia and her boyfriend Young-sik. And then they were also impressed by the bold fashion. As Sonia was a companion to an American military officer, the character was shown in trendy dresses from American magazines. It was this period when Choi Kyung-ja came back to Seoul from the refugee and established her sewing academy. Knowing international fashion trends was important, as she named her academy called International Sewing Academy, 국제복장학원. Unlike a tailoring academy for men to learn how to make menswear, Miss Choi's 국제 Academy taught how to make a fashionable woman's wear. This was the age of 양장점, called tailoring boutiques for women's wear. Behind me, the background picture shows 송옥 양장점 in Myeongdong. In the late 1950s, Miss Choi's boutique were making 50 to 60 overcoats a month. Miss Choi trained to be a classical musician at Musashino College of Music and then attending Ochanomizu University to learn sewing and tailoring was extraordinary in many ways. Miss Choi and her students created a foundation for high-end fashion to grow and expand by organizing a fashion show or a presentation of leading designers. Advertisement, ordinary people did not wear these exquisite dresses, but read about them in print media or film. These clips came from the 1956 film Madame Freedom or 자유부인. The main character, Professor Chang's wife, Sun Young-oh, works in a women's fashion boutique. Both Mr. Baek Kwang-jin, who became Sun Young's love interest, and Miss Yoon-ju Choi, the friend who introduced Sun Young to a dance club, are depicted as fashionable people dressed in Western style. Advertisements and mail order catalogs from the United States became common sources of fashion inspiration. This became eventually a trendy style called Ivy style in Japan throughout the 1960s, popular among young men wearing a relaxed, casual dress composed of khaki pants, an Oxford shirt or sweater, or a vest with penny loafers, as opposed to three-piece business suit of woolen textiles. You can see the Japanese brand BAN, B-A-N, established in 1954. American-style fashion became dominant in film and fashion photography as the US-based fashion magazines and lifestyle magazines led the elite culture in South Korea since 1945. French or European fashion houses still focused on a limited line of production with emphasis on artisanal techniques. However, with a rising population and growing consumer expenditures, the post-war United States became the mecca of large volume production. In film Madame Butterfly, Mr. Baek, the impeccably dressed gentleman, was accused of fraud in import enterprise and later subject to the police investigation. Miss Yoon-ju Choi, the friend of Sun Young, was also involved with the dissemination of smuggled foreign goods in the black market. With a strong dollar, tailoring a US-inspired look based on the Sears Roebuck magazine at a local dressmaker was a better option for most consumers. So the US aid economy had a huge impact on Korean people's lifestyle. As seen in the fashion show of beauty pageants, American films, magazines were strategically introduced to ordinary people in South Korea. Limited supplies of beauty products like lipsticks and fashion accessories, including nylon pantyhose, for example, were popular items for imported products traded at Namdaemun Market. Until late 1960s, Korean female students wore skirt-based winter uniforms without stockings. On the streets, young women in trendy outfits were parading the street in boutique-tailored or homespun 양장점 dress, while married women showed up in modernized hanbok design. It was popular to make hanbok out of velvet or tying the joguri with a brooch, as shown in the Madame Butterfly. Professor wife Oh Sun-young's 양품점, for example, the boutique selling beauty supplies and fashion items like a blouse, had a poster. You can see in other scenes that there are posters of the US cosmetic brand Max Factor Jr. that you see over here. Nonetheless, to ordinary citizens of South Korea, American-style fashion was a novelty and a luxury. As gatherings and parties are held in a hotel, women needed a lavish outfit. Married women were not fashionistas. To show modesty and splendor, hanbok dress became a suitable choice. So famous hanbok designer Lee Lisa, who passed away in 2020, started making hanbok to supplement her household income at a corner of 양장점, women's tailoring boutique. However, the international trend like a miniskirt did arrive in South Korea. As I have written in my essay on miniskirts, the Korean journalism had a lengthy comment on the lack of modesty and Confucian decorum in the popularity of miniskirts. Singer Yoon Bok-hee came to Korea in a stylish miniskirt dress in the manner of Balenciaga, André Courrèges, Mary Kant. Jacqueline Kennedy in television news or magazines also represented a new style of a simple silhouette mini dress. To street fashion of mini dress or mini skirts, women had access to some technological innovation. Korean nylon companies were able to manufacture pantyhoses. Electric sewing machines were more popular, more powerful and efficient. Korean textile companies produced high-demand synthetic textiles as well as woolen textiles. 제일모직 of woolen textiles, the precursor of Samsung as today's global conglomerate, actively promoted new styles of knitwear. The calendars from the 1964 shows woven woolen textiles with a brand name of Golden Tex and wool yarn brand called Jangmi, meaning rose. Fashion examples in these carefully designed calendars show a simple silhouette mini dress made of homespun knitwear using yarns of Jangmi brand. The women wear knitwear, men wear tailored woolen suit. Then in the 1970s, mini skirt fast disappeared. It was the age of wide pants called pantalon, as the subculture of hippie look was popular among the youth in the United States and Western Europe. Fashionable, well-to-do women in Asia also wore pants as well as jeans. Suddenly, skirt became longer below the knees. As the Life magazine's headline shows, it was a battle between a minimalist and a maximalist. However, American fashion or anything overtly American was not much embraced among the youth, asking for democratic progress. Some affluent urban young people wore jeans, which was expensive due to American brand association. However, a majority of college-aged students were wary of their choices of looking pro-American, as I argued in my previous essay on the unisex fashion from 1970s in South Korea. Young men with excessively longer hair in the spirit of hippies were persecuted or scrutinized. And as the picture shows, women with a mini skirt over 17 centimeters above knees were also persecuted. In the 1980s, South Korea participated in global events like the 1984 Asian Games and the 1988 Olympic Games. These were opportunities to let the world know about the economic miracle South Korea achieved. For Korean fashion, it is the age of ready-to-wear fashion. Tailoring boutiques for women's wear remained in Myeongdong, but barely survived the trend of manufactured clothes. Women's interest in fashion was beyond clothes, as the color advertisements became inserted in newspapers from 1970s, and the color television broadcast started in the 1980s. Colorful makeup became more and more important. Korean cosmetic companies were churning out aggressive marketing campaigns to show their products by hiring fashion icons of each period. In street fashion, Korean students had a brief period of abolishment of school uniforms in the 1980s. However, gradually, parents and students opted in to wear school uniforms for convenience and identity as students. Until the 1980s, school uniforms were made by mom and pop small tailors near each school. However, with the rise of ready-to-wear companies, tailored school uniforms disappeared by the mid-1990s. Now, school uniforms are just like any trendy clothes. Large companies hire the most popular celebrity of each year to advertise their brand of school uniforms. So briefly in 1980s, there was a time that students didn't wear school uniforms and they would wear American style casual clothes to school. The Beverly Hills 90210 was shown to Korea with dubbing in 1990s. It advocated for the casual lifestyle of American students. So now, conclusion. Using popular cinema movie posters from the 1950s and 80s, as well as advertisements in magazines, newspaper, print culture, this paper discussed identity politics, cultural authentication, and soft power of American hegemony in young adult culture in South Korea, including diasporic communities of overseas Korean people in North America. I didn't talk a lot about it, but 80s, the US-based Koreans, they also brought in the American style street fashion. In this context, one must acknowledge hardworking Korean women's contributions to economic development and stylistic innovation, especially from the early 1960s to the end of 1970s was the period called Korean style compressed modernity and the economic miracle of Han River. Women worked 14 to 16 hours a day when overseas clients sent high volume orders. Young women from rural villages worked during the day and went to school in the evening. If they saved enough money, they could go to Miss Choi's 국제 Fashion Academy or even a university. For those factory workers or at-home seamstresses, we do not know much about their knowledge transfer. At the National Folk Museum, I found a notebook owned by a woman. It is a notebook where she wrote some recipes, pasted scraps from magazines, and copied dress patterns. I can imagine that her friend could borrow this notebook, or this woman could revise the measurements for a family member. Assiduous Korean women were everywhere. The pattern book of a woman named Hyun Mi-hwa shows how Korean women participated in the fashion system as consumers and producers. Most women's high school required a 3-year home economics class of teaching household essential skills. They are cooking, nutrition, sewing, knitting, tailoring, bookkeeping, and gardening. Some women were enthusiastic and well-accomplished home dressmakers. As this notebook shows, some women shared pattern making and dressmaking with friends or family members using self-initiated learning methods. And I also show 1978 magazine called 대한복연. It is industry magazine, and it shows different styles made of their own textile. This one is called Primotex, made by Daesung woven textile company. While Miss Choi's 국제 Fashion Academy educated young designers, Dr. Jung Young-yang helped more unfortunate ladies to learn embroidery and receive a meager income to overcome poverty. Her school is called 국제 Crafts Institute. It's almost like twin sisters, 국제 Fashion Academy and 국제 Crafts Institute. Miss Chung, Dr. Chung eventually made a successful business enterprise by selling hand-embroidered handkerchiefs and scarves to the department stores in the United States. Fashion leaders who were looking at Roebuck, Sears, mail-order catalogs, or were able to read the Life magazines or any foreign journals, asked the high street tailors to create the popular look of their time. Then local tailors and homespun dressmakers were following the trend from Korean language lifestyle magazines, from film or media, from neighborhood stores. For ordinary people in South Korea, from the 1950s to 1980s, the impact of US cultural hegemony in post-war South Korea left a deeper impact on street fashion than they realized. the dissemination of style was ubiquitous. Thank you so much.